Ulysses S. Grant, victorious general of the Civil War and President of the United States, was a big fan of cigars. In his retirement after leaving the White House, Grant had 20 cigars lined up on his desk every morning, and by the end of the day, he would smoke all of them. Sadly, Grant eventually developed throat cancer. According to his wife Julia, in the summer of 1884, Grant's symptoms came on suddenly while eating a peach. She recalled, "He started up as if in great pain. He walked up and down the room and out to the piazza and rinsed his throat again and again. He was in great pain and said water hurt like fire." Fire was an understatement. The cancer made it an agony. As Grant himself wrote in a letter, "Nothing gives me so much pain as swallowing water. If you can imagine what molten lead would be going down your throat, that is what I feel when swallowing." This made Grant's last word before his 1885 death all the more impactful. As the end came near, he said, "Water." On the 100th anniversary of Michael Collins' death, Irish Taoiseach Micheál Martin praised him at a memorial event, calling him a hero. Not all of Ireland felt that way in 1922, however. Collins was a leader of the independence movement, but in 1921 he made the controversial decision of signing a treaty with the British. On August 24, 1922, Collins was traveling in a heavily fortified convoy. Forced to take back roads, the cars drove right into an ambush. An estimated 200 Irish fighters who had found themselves at odds with Collins shot at the party, hitting Collins in the head. Before he died, he was reported to have said, "Forgive them, bury me in Glasnevin with the boys." However, some noted that these words are a bit too on the nose when it comes to a perfect, memorable last statement in a terrifying moment. The historian and Irish Civil War expert Diarmaid Ferriter called these supposed last words classic propaganda. On October 30, 1984, India's Prime Minister Indira Gandhi told a crowd of supporters, "I'm not interested in a long life. I'm not afraid of these things. I don't mind if my life goes in the service of this nation. If I die today, every drop of my blood will invigorate the nation." Her statement proved prophetic. The next morning, Gandhi was assassinated. For 2 years, some militant Sikhs had been rebelling against Gandhi's government, turning their religion's golden temple into an armed compound. In 1984, Gandhi ordered Indian troops to take back the temple by force, and hundreds died, mostly Sikhs. It was notable to those around her that after this bloody event, she still used Sikh bodyguards. Some questioned the decision, but she believed it was important symbolically to help heal the nation. But the men wanted vengeance. On October 31st, Gandhi came down in the morning and greeted her 2 bodyguards. In response, they drew their guns and shot her to death. Her last word was the traditional Hindu greeting, "Namaste."
In spite of our best efforts, we could not save her, and she expired at about 2:23 or so.
There are few events in history that have been more minutely analyzed than the assassination of President John F. Kennedy in Dallas, Texas on November 22, 1963. As Kennedy's motorcade drove through Dealey Plaza, Lee Harvey Oswald shot and killed Kennedy from the book depository building. Oswald was captured shortly thereafter and then murdered by Jack Ruby while being transported. From this, 1,000 conspiracy theories blossomed. But for all the details about the Kennedy assassination that you probably know just from existing in a world that is obsessed with it, you know the president's last words, even though his widow, Jackie Kennedy, publicly revealed them during her testimony before the Warren Commission. According to the former First Lady, right before the shots, the wife of the governor of Texas, who was in the limousine with them, said to the president, "You certainly can't say that the people of Dallas haven't given you a nice welcome." As to what the president replied, Jackie answered, "I think he said, I don't know if I remember it or I've read it. No, you certainly can't," or something. While her memories are the best available source, her response also shows how trauma can warp those memories, so we may never know for sure exactly what was said. Benazir Bhutto was the first woman elected to lead a majority Muslim country when she became Prime Minister of Pakistan in 1988. She served 2 non-consecutive terms, but things became more complicated after that. In self-imposed exile, she claimed Prime Minister Pervez Musharraf called to intimidate her in 2007, saying, "He threatened me. He told me not to come back. He warned me not to come back." She ignored the threats and returned. On December 27th, Bhutto attended a political rally. After her speech, as she left the rally, she again waved through the vehicle's sunroof and shouted, "G.A. Bhutto." She was yelling this, which translates to "Long live Bhutto," when an assassin fired at her. Fellow politician Safdar Abbasi was in the car with Bhutto and told the Sunday Telegraph, "She did not say anything more. There was the sound of firing. I heard the sound of a bullet. I saw her. She looked as though she ducked in when she heard the firing. We did not realize that she had been hit by a bullet." Her assassin, a 15-year-old boy, then blew himself up with a suicide vest, killing more than a dozen other people. Musharraf denied having anything to do with Bhutto's assassination, though Bhutto's son told CNN that Musharraf was behind it.
You blame him for your mother's death?
He murdered my mother.
In 2013, Musharraf was indicted for her murder. He ultimately died in exile in 2023. By the time the end came for Venezuelan President Hugo Chavez on March 5, 2013, he'd been suffering for a long time. 2 years earlier, he had announced on television that he had already undergone surgery for pelvic cancer. After that, he needed repeated rounds of chemotherapy and surgeries as the cancer kept returning. By the end of 2012, it was impossible to hide the fact that he was extremely unwell and most likely dying. The government even released a photo of Chavez with a breathing tube. General Jose Ornella Ferreira was with Chavez when he died. Despite his cancer battle, it was a heart attack that would be the leader's cause of death. The day before, Chavez went into a coma. Before that, he managed to get his last words across. According to Ferreira, he couldn't speak, but he said it with his lips. "I don't want to die. Please don't let me die," because he loved his country. He sacrificed himself for his country. The revolution that took place on August 4, 1983, brought a young army officer named Thomas Sankara to power in the West African country that would come to be known as Burkina Faso. He took power at a difficult time in the continent's history, but planned radical improvement projects for his country. Under his program, millions of people were vaccinated, infant mortality plummeted, and he started unraveling ties with colonial power France. However, these good works did not make Sankara popular with everyone in the country. Some had been doing well for themselves under French imperialism and would be happy to go back. Others were forced to comply with new directives through coercive measures. And the military, broadly speaking, was not a fan of Sankara. A journalist later reported what happened on the last day Sankara was alive. It seemed like a regular day, full of meetings, making plans with his wife, and taking a nap. His 4:30 p.m. meeting was supposed to be quick, but it had barely started when those present heard a car approaching the building. There were gunshots, and someone demanded those inside come out. Sankara said, "Stay, stay. It's me they want." He walked out of the room with his hands raised, but a surviving witness said he had barely stepped out of the door before he was shot. The attackers had come to kill. Nancy Astor was born and raised in the United States, but her second husband, Waldorf Astor, whom she married in 1906, was British. Nancy threw herself into the political scene in the UK, as Waldorf was a member of Parliament. But when Waldorf's father died in 1919, he became a Viscount and had to give up his elected position to sit in the House of Lords, as there are rules against aristocracy sitting in the House of Commons. Nancy seemed to be the perfect candidate to replace him, despite the fact that no woman had ever been elected to Parliament before. Indeed, only about 2/3 of the women in the UK were allowed to vote, and even that had only been the case for a year after a long struggle for equal voting rights.
I realized that I was there because of what they'd done, and that gave me great courage.
Nancy won the election in a landslide and took her place in Parliament, where she stayed until 1945. She used soft diplomacy to influence foreign policy while concentrating her activities on education and temperance. She also famously had problems with her social acquaintance, Winston Churchill. In April 1964, Lady Astor suffered a stroke. Before she died on May 2nd, it is reported that she called out for her late husband, Waldorf. But her last known words, according to her son, were more lighthearted. Nancy reportedly opened her eyes, looked around at all her loved ones gathered at her bedside, and quipped, "Am I dying, or is this my birthday?" Over the course of his astonishing life, Winston Churchill spent 6 decades in the British Parliament, wrote dozens of books, won the Nobel Prize for Literature, was instrumental in winning the Second World War, and became Prime Minister not once, but twice. His life is also proof, if proof were needed, that depression is a disease that can affect anyone. Churchill was plagued by what he called his black dog during certain periods of his life. While the International Churchill Society feels his mental health issues have been exaggerated in recent decades, they admit he sometimes showed signs of depression. With this in mind, it makes Churchill's last words especially poignant. While one should be suspect of all last word claims, Churchill's are pretty impeccably sourced. In a 1965 article, the New York Times reported that the London Evening Standard had it on excellent authority that, despite being in a comatose state for the better part of 2 weeks before he died after suffering a stroke, Churchill had at one point regained consciousness, looked at his son-in-law, and stated, "I am bored with it all." Churchill died 9 days after uttering what are believed to be his final words on January 24, 1965, at the age of 90. If you or someone you know needs help with mental health, please contact the Crisis Text Line by texting HOME to 741-741. Call the National Alliance on Mental Illness Helpline at 1-800-950-NAMI 6264, or visit the National Institute of Mental Health website.